There are moments in American politics when a single room seems to hold its breath, when history feels like it is leaning over your shoulder just to watch what happens next. And on that night, in that grand hall in Washington, D.C., all it took was a simple speech for Barack Obama to remind the world why millions still longed for his steady hand. What began as a calm address would soon twist into a confrontation the Trumps would never forget. Eric Trump tried to mock Obama's words, but only moments later, he found himself stunned, silenced by something far stronger than anger: composure. The evening had arrived. One of the most anticipated leadership forums in the Capitol, a gathering of global dignitaries, high-ranking officials, journalists, financiers, and political icons. But this year, the audience wasn't buzzing about the topics. They were buzzing about the seating arrangement. 3 figures sat in the front row. 3 names that didn't just shape politics, they split it down the middle. Barack Obama, Donald Trump, Eric Trump. Different in presence, different in philosophy, different in the ways they commanded attention. Obama, calm, deliberate, a soft-spoken force whose words carried weight long after they left his lips. Trump, louder, unfiltered, built for confrontation, built for spotlight. Eric Young, confident, eager, still sharpening his public voice, yet carrying a last name that thundered through every headline in modern America. The venue glowed with patriotic colors, red, white, and blue, sweeping across the stage. Gold lights reflected off polished marble floors. Rows of flags stiffened against the light breeze from overhead vents. Photographers tightened their grips. Reporters whispered predictions. Guests watched the front row more than the podium, because everyone knew if Obama, Trump, and Eric were in one room, something was destined to erupt. At last, the host, a respected political commentator, stepped forward, gripping the microphone with a smile that only barely hid his nerves. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice steady but hands tight, "please welcome our first speaker, former President of the United States, Barack Obama." Applause thundered instantly. Some rose to their feet. Some clapped quietly. All leaned forward. From the corner of the stage, Barack Obama appeared. Tall, collected, moving with the unbothered ease of someone who knew exactly who he was and who didn't need theatrics to remind anyone else. He nodded once, then began. "Thank you. It's good to see so many faces here, leaders, thinkers, young people, ready to shape what comes next." His tone wasn't the tone of a politician. It was the tone of a mentor. He paused, drew them in, and continued. "I want to talk about something simple, something every American feels, even if they don't say it out loud." He spoke of rising costs, food, rent, gas, not as statistics, but as stories of real families choosing between dinner and bills. The room grew still. Even those who disagreed with him politically felt the truth in his words. Obama's voice strengthened. But leadership isn't about blaming the person before you or the one after you. Leadership is about standing up right now and asking, what can we do together to fix this? Applause erupted. Obama smiled faintly, lifted his water, and continued speaking of accountability, unity, compassion. He didn't call out names, but everyone could feel the quiet shadow of political tension behind each sentence. Donald Trump sat stiffly in the front row, arms crossed, jaw tight, expression locked. Eric sat beside him, phone face down, posture tall, eyes sharp. He tried to appear calm, but his gaze kept flickering between his father and Obama, as if studying the contrast. Obama ended with a line that made the hall fall completely silent. "A nation doesn't rise because one man wins. It rises when every man and woman stands together, even when it's hard." He paused. Leadership isn't about pointing fingers. It's about lifting hands. Another wave of applause swept the room, loud, sustained, even from surprising corners. Photographers scrambled to capture his still, reflective posture. The moment carried dignity. Until a smaller moment changed the air. Trump leaned toward Eric. No microphone caught the whisper. But Eric smirked just for a second before stiffening again. The host returned to the stage. "Thank you, President Obama. That was powerful." The applause faded. Silence settled. And then, with our next speaker, President Donald J. Trump. Obama sat down. Trump rose, buttoned his jacket, and stepped forward with a smile that looked less like warmth and more like a challenge. Flashbulbs burst, pens lifted, tension sharpened. Trump placed both hands on the podium, leaned in. "Well," he said, voice slick with sarcasm, "that was quite a speech, wasn't it?" Nervous laughter sprinkled around the hall. Trump continued, voice tightening. "Barack talks about unity, about compassion, nice words. But the problems Americans face today didn't just appear out of thin air. They began when he was in charge." The room froze. Trump was not easing into his message. He was attacking head-on. He pointed outward. People can't afford groceries. Gas prices are up. Families are struggling. And you know who built the foundation for that? Obama. Some gasps, some applause, some uneasy shifting. All eyes jumped between the two men. Obama stayed silent. Not shaken, not defensive, just watching. And that calm made Trump push harder. "Talk is cheap, Barack," he said. "You can sound pretty all you want, but if you don't deliver results, those words mean nothing." Cheers erupted on one side, discomfort on the other. Then Obama smiled, just a small, quiet, knowing smile. It lasted 1 second, but that single second sent a visible shift through the room. Trump noticed. His smirk died instantly. He looked to his right. "Eric," he said, "you've got something to say, don't you?" Eric froze, but the glare in his father's eyes made it clear. This was not a request. Slowly, Eric leaned toward the microphone. The room fell completely silent just seconds before the night spun into chaos. The room went silent, so silent that even the soft whir of the cameras felt loud. Eric Trump adjusted the microphone. His shoulders stiffened. His lips tightened. And for a moment, he seemed unsure whether to speak or step back. But his father's stare held him in place. Eric cleared his throat, the sound echoing across the hall. "Well," he began, his voice smooth but edged with sarcasm, "I guess we all appreciate a good speech about unity and compassion, especially from someone who spent years dividing the country." Gasps rippled like a wave. A few nervous claps. But most people just stared. Barack Obama didn't move. He simply watched Eric with the same calm he'd shown all night, as if letting the young Trump reveal exactly who he was. Eric continued, warming into the moment. "My dad always says, leadership is about truth. And sometimes the truth isn't pretty. Sometimes it's about asking the questions other people are too afraid to ask." He leaned forward, letting the microphone catch every syllable. "And some people still wonder if every president was even born to lead this country." The audience reacted instantly, gasps, murmurs, shifting chairs. It took only 9 seconds, but the meaning was unmistakable. He had revived the old, racist, discredited rumor that Obama had faced years ago. Donald Trump smirked proudly, but no one else was smiling. Some attendees looked horrified. Others stared at their shoes, afraid their reactions would be caught on camera. The host froze in his seat, not sure whether to intervene or disappear. Obama sat completely still. No anger, no surprise, no defensiveness, just a small, patient silence. Eric glanced at his father, seeking approval. Trump nodded once, sharply, like a general giving confirmation. But the silence in the hall grew heavier, like fog rolling across a valley. Finally, Obama smiled. Not a mocking smile, not a sarcastic one. A steady, knowing, almost fatherly smile. Someone in the audience whispered, "He's not going to take that, is he?" But Obama didn't move. He waited. Trump misread that calm. He stepped toward the mic, eager to seize control. "You see?" Trump said loudly. "That's what I mean. No answer, no defense, just words." Eric smiled again, But that smile wouldn't last. Obama's calm was not weakness, it was preparation. And the moment he stood, the energy of the entire hall shifted. Not because he raised his voice, not because he moved quickly, but because authority, real authority, doesn't need sound to be felt. Obama stepped forward, hands relaxed at his sides. He positioned himself at the microphone. The room fell silent again. Even the photographers held their breath. Obama spoke softly. "I've been in politics a long time. I've heard a lot of things. Some smart, some not so smart." A quiet chuckle rolled through the back of the room. "But I'll tell you this. Mocking someone's story never makes your own story stronger." He turned toward Trump briefly, the gesture controlled and steady. "And repeating the same old lies doesn't make them true." Then he faced Eric directly. "You see, son, what you just did? It's not confidence. It's imitation. You've copied your father's tone, but not his experience. And that's a dangerous mix." The air tightened. Every word landed heavy. Obama continued. "You question where I come from. But do you even know where you come from?" He paused, then delivered the line that shattered the room. "Are you Ivanka's kid? Or Melania's?" A collective gasp exploded across the hall. Camera flashes burst. People turned in shock. Eric froze his expression, draining of all confidence. He looked to his father instinctively. Trump said nothing. Obama didn't gloat. He didn't raise a brow. He simply stood there, letting the truth settle. Eric opened his mouth, but no words came out. Trump's anger surged visibly. Jaw clenched, eyes sharp. He leaned over and hissed something into Eric's ear, then said aloud, voice cold enough to cut glass, "Go wait in the car." More gasps. Eric hesitated, humiliated, exposed before standing slowly. Every footstep toward the exit sounded like a hammer striking stone. Obama watched him leave, but not with smugness, with something closer to disappointment or pity. When Eric finally vanished behind the curtain, silence lingered like smoke. Trump stood rigid, red-faced, breathing heavily. He raised his hand to grab the microphone, but Obama spoke first. "When families turn insults into habits," he said quietly, "they forget what respect looks like. And when respect disappears, so does leadership." Nothing moved, no cameras clicked, no one whispered. The truth sat heavy in the room, too real to ignore. The silence after Obama's words stretched long enough to feel like the hall itself was holding its breath. Trump's face was stiff, jaw locked, fists tight, eyes burning with unreadable fury. But he still didn't move, and that stillness told the audience more than any outburst ever could. Obama stepped back from the microphone, giving space for the moment to settle. He didn't look triumphant. He didn't look smug. He looked steady, as if reminding everyone that the point was never humiliation, it was clarity. He returned to his seat slowly, each step measured, purposeful, composed. But the room wasn't ready to breathe just yet. Because once he sat, Obama lifted his gaze toward the audience, then back to Trump's now empty right side, where Eric had been moments earlier. And then, in that familiar voice that could soften a room even when it carried steel beneath it, he began again. "You know," Obama said, "when I was president, criticism came every day, some fair, some not. That comes with the job." He paused. Trump flinched slightly, just enough that those in the front row noticed. "But I learned something important," Obama continued. "You can't respond to everything. You can't fire back at every insult. Because sometimes silence says more than shouting ever could." The crowd listened with the kind of attention people reserve for truth they didn't know they needed to hear. Trump leaned forward, lips parting to interrupt, but Obama lifted a hand gently, and the room instinctively fell still again. "But tonight," Obama continued, "we all witnessed something worth talking about." He turned his head toward the empty seat again. "The moment your son repeated a line meant to divide, meant to question someone's place in this country, it reminded me of something." The air thickened. Obama's voice stayed calm, soft but sharp, warm but unyielding. "This isn't just politics anymore. It's about what kind of lessons we pass down. People shifted uncomfortably, feeling the weight of generational truth settling around them. Obama looked at the crowd again, sweeping his eyes across the faces. When a child mocks instead of asks questions, that's not entirely his fault. It's a reflection of what he's been taught. Trump leaned back, this time stiff, defensive, silent. And that's the danger of anger that's never checked, Obama continued. It spreads, from parent to child, from leader to follower, until it becomes the only language a family speaks. A murmur traveled through the audience like wind through leaves. They understood what he utters meant and exactly who he meant. Obama breathed in slowly before continuing. I've seen this pattern before. The mockery, the personal attacks, the distractions. It started with you, Mr. President. The entire room held its breath. It went through Melania. It went through Ivanka. And now, your son. Another ripple of whispers. Obama didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His calmness was louder than any shout. Then, with piercing clarity, he delivered one of the most unforgettable questions of the night. Families are supposed to lift each other higher. But what happens when the family itself becomes the stage for attack? Trump's jaw twitched. He opened his mouth again, but nothing came out. Obama paused, allowing the question to hang like a lantern in the dark. Then he shifted gears, voice softening. You know, Representative Jasmine Crockett once said something powerful. The room stirred. Everyone knew who she was, bold, fierce, fearless. Truth doesn't disappear just because someone refuses to look at it. Her name created a new tension in the hall. Obama walked that line carefully, every word precise. She brought evidence, real evidence, about behaviors, relationships, patterns inside certain powerful families, evidence that made people uncomfortable. Trump's posture snapped just slightly, a tell that Obama did not miss. I don't repeat rumors, Obama said plainly. I stick to facts. But the truth is, when powerful men speak about women, even their own daughters, with the language of possession or comparison, something is deeply wrong. The crowd gasped again. Everyone knew the reference. Everyone remembered the clip. And everyone knew Obama didn't need to mention the exact words for the point to hit cleanly. In 2006, Obama continued, you said, and I quote, if Ivanka weren't my daughter, perhaps I'd be dating her. The hall froze. Trump's eyes widened anger, embarrassment, disbelief, colliding all at once. That's not leadership, Obama said softly. That's not pride. That is a man confusing love with vanity. Another shock rolled through the audience. Obama didn't step back. He didn't soften. He let the truth stand tall on its own. Leadership isn't about tearing down names, he added gently. It's about building your own with dignity. He turned toward the audience once more. When we raise our children, whether in a penthouse or a one-bedroom apartment, we teach them by example. If all they see is bitterness, that is what they become. If all they hear is anger, that is the language they learn. He paused, softening the room with a steady, almost comforting tone. But if they see respect, even for those who disagree with you, then they learn what real strength looks like. By now, even strong Trump supporters were still, not defeated, just reflective. This wasn't a fight anymore. It was a lesson. Obama took a sip of water, set the glass down, and added, tonight, I'm not here to win an argument. I'm here to remind everyone, including the next generation, that leadership isn't about being right all the time. It's about being real. He turned toward Trump one last time. Because when power turns into pride, and pride turns into cruelty, a nation starts to lose its heart. The applause began quietly, soft, unsure, respectful, then louder, then thunderous. Trump sat, unmoving, hands gripping the armrests, face tight, unable to speak. Not yet, because even he understood. One wrong word here, and he would lose the room completely. Obama nodded, stepped away from the podium, and walked off stage with the quiet confidence of a man who didn't need to shout to be heard. Cameras followed him. Eyes followed him. The moment followed him. And Trump remained frozen, anger and humiliation swirling beneath the surface, as Barack Obama left the podium. The atmosphere inside the hall thickened, dense with tension, disbelief, and something far more powerful than outrage. Realization. People weren't cheering wildly. They weren't booing. They weren't shouting. They were simply quiet, a deep, reflective silence. The kind that only follows when everyone in the room knows they've just witnessed something historic. Obama didn't turn back. He didn't wave. He didn't bask in applause. He walked steadily toward the exit every step, carrying the weight of composure, not victory. The cameras tracked his movement, catching the calm in his face, the confidence without arrogance, the dignity without theatrics. He pushed open the double doors and stepped into the cool Washington night. Outside, reporters swarmed microphones, stretched forward, cameramen stumbling over each other, all hoping for a quote that would become tomorrow's headline. Obama simply smiled gently. "Good evening, everyone. Let's all take a breath." No follow-up, no extra jab, just that simple grounding sentence. Then he got into his car and was driven away. Inside the hall, the silence remained thick, unmoving, almost surreal. The host, still visibly shaken, stood and approached the microphone. He cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause for President Obama." And for the second time that night, the entire room rose to its feet, not because of politics, not because of loyalty, but because respect demanded it. The applause rolled across the hall, long, loud, unified. Even people who had arrived firmly in Trump's corner found themselves clapping without hesitation. Trump, however, did not rise. He sat stiffly, looking around the room with a dawning realization. He had lost control of the moment, not through policy, not through debate, but through the contrast of character. He whispered something to the host, then stood abruptly and walked off stage, without a word. The audience watched him go, stunned not by his retreat, but by the emptiness it carried. Later that night, clips from the event spread across social media like wildfire. But what people remembered wasn't the confrontation. It was the calm. Obama's calm. Obama's restraint. Obama's refusal to play the game Trump had spent years perfecting. News anchors replayed the moment Eric Trump brought back the old birth conspiracy, and then the devastating composure with which Obama dismantled it. Political analysts called it a masterclass. Journalists called it legendary. Viewers called it a lesson. And in the following days, the conversation shifted. Not about policy, not about parties, but about character, about what it means to lead when the spotlight is brightest and the temptation to lash out is strongest. Some praised Obama for his response. Some criticized Trump's reaction. But nearly everyone agreed on one thing. The contrast was undeniable. In that hall, under those heavy lights, people saw more than a clash between two presidents. They saw a father struggling to guide a son. They saw a son thrown into a fire he wasn't prepared for. And they saw a man who reminded them that leadership isn't about volume. It's about values. A few days later, Obama spoke briefly at a small community center. Someone asked him about the incident. He smiled. Sometimes, he said, the loudest lesson comes from the quietest response. The line reverberated across newsrooms and timelines. Because it wasn't just a quote. It was the truth people had witnessed with their own eyes. And it reflected something deeper. A lesson for parents teaching their children. A lesson for young people growing up in a world full of outrage. A lesson for leaders who confuse domination with strength. Obama wanted something clear. True power isn't loud. It's controlled, measured, intentional. That's why when he asked Eric Trump, "Are you Ivanka's kid or Melania's?" It wasn't cruelty. It was a mirror, a reflection of what happens when imitation becomes identity. And while the moment stunned millions, it wasn't meant to destroy Eric. It was meant to wake him up, because every young person makes mistakes. The real test is whether they learn from them. In the days that followed, Eric Trump stayed silent. No comments, No interviews, no public statements. And maybe, just maybe, that silence wasn't embarrassment. Maybe it was reflection. A rare, perhaps overdue pause. Because when someone challenges the root of your actions, not the surface, it forces you to look inward. Obama's message wasn't just aimed at the Trumps, it was aimed at anyone watching. When someone mocks you or questions you, he had said indirectly through his actions, don't let anger lead. Pause, breathe, respond with dignity. Because the moment you allow someone else to control your emotions, you hand them your spave, power. That's what made Obama's calm so devastating that night. While others shouted, he listened. While others attacked, he analyzed. While others tried to provoke him, he stood firm. His restraint was the knockout punch. As the night faded and the hall emptied, the image that stayed in people's minds wasn't the confrontation, it was the contrast. Trump's anger versus Obama's calm, Eric's mockery versus Obama's grace, noise versus control, and, ultimately, the quiet walk off stage that carried more power than any mic drop. As the night wound down, a lingering stillness followed everyone out of the hall. It wasn't the kind of quiet that comes from confusion. It was the kind that follows clarity. The kind people only feel after witnessing something they know they won't forget. Outside, the city lights flickered against the dark sky. Drivers honked in distant traffic. Journalists typed furiously on laptops balanced on their knees, flooding the news cycle with headlines they knew would dominate the coming days. But inside that grand building, something deeper had shifted. People weren't debating policy. They weren't reciting talking points. They weren't arguing over party lines. They were talking about character, about restraint, about dignity, about the difference between reacting and responding. One moment had changed everything. Obama never raised his voice. Trump never lowered his. And between them, Eric Trump tried to step into a fight he wasn't ready for. But the room had seen the contrast too clearly. Later that night, long after the crowd had filtered out, clips from the event surged through social media. Millions watched Eric Trump revive an old, disproven conspiracy, and then watched Obama dismantle it with one line, one breath, and one devastating truth. Comment sections filled instantly. He taught a masterclass. This is why leadership matters. Obama didn't destroy Eric. He educated him. Some viewers joked about the moment. Others defended the Trumps passionately. But beneath the noise, a message cut through unmistakably. Respect doesn't need volume. As the internet debated, more footage surfaced showing Trump storming out of the hall, jaw clenched, face flushed. Viewers compared it to Obama's calm walk through the doors moments earlier. And the difference was impossible to ignore. Political analysts spent the next 48 hours breaking down the confrontation. Obama's silence was deliberate. Trump lost control the moment he pushed Eric forward. This wasn't about politics. It was generational. The deeper narrative was clear. A father trying to use his son as an extension of his voice. A son eager to impress, unaware of the magnitude of what he was stepping into. And a seasoned leader unwilling to let a young man carry the weight of someone else's bitterness. Days later, during a quiet community event in Chicago, Obama was asked again about what happened. He gave a soft, patient smile. Sometimes, he said, lessons hit hardest when they're not shouted. That line spread like wildfire. Because it wasn't just wise, it was what everyone had witnessed. The moment Eric Trump repeated a divisive lie that wasn't his, the moment Obama responded with composure instead of retaliation, the moment Trump pushed his son into a confrontation he wasn't prepared for, people saw more than a clash. They saw a story about inheritance, of behavior, of values, of identity. And Obama's question, "Do you even know where you come from?" hit deeper than the crowd first realized. It wasn't cruel. It wasn't an attack. It was the truth, wrapped inside a challenge. Who are you when you're not repeating someone else's anger? For Eric Trump, that moment was a turning point. According to staffers close to the family, he grew unusually quiet in the days that followed. No social media posts, no statements, no interviews. A rare silence for someone raised in the center of public noise. and perhaps that silence had purpose. Every young person faces a moment where they must decide whether to inherit someone else's identity or build their own. The confrontation with Obama wasn't about politics, it was about that choice. Meanwhile, experts across major networks dissected the implications. Obama reframed the narrative. He exposed immaturity without humiliating. He taught the room what leadership looks like. And the public felt it. Because while the confrontation itself was dramatic, what stayed with people was the contrast. Trump used his volume, Obama used his presence. Eric used imitation, Obama used precision. One was reaction, one was intention. As the hours turned into days, people around the country reflected on the moment. Teachers played the clip in classrooms. Parents discussed it at dinner tables. Young people shared it across TikTok, captioning it with, "This is the difference between power and control." Obama's calm wasn't passive. It wasn't weakness. It was strategic. It was the kind of control that says, "You cannot drag me into chaos. I will not meet anger with anger. I know who I am, and you cannot shake that." That's what made the event unforgettable. When noise collided with grace, grace won. When mockery collided with composure, composure won. When provocation collided with truth, truth won. Obama didn't need to embarrass Eric Trump. He didn't need to shout him down. He simply exposed the foundation beneath the moment. A father teaching his son to fight battles rooted in insecurity, and a leader teaching a nation what self-control actually looks like. As the lights dimmed in the hall and the last staffers packed up cables and microphones, the story of that night became bigger than politics. It became a lesson about identity, inheritance, and leadership. And the image that stayed burned in people's minds wasn't the confrontation. It was the contrast. Eric Trump shrinking under the weight of a lie he didn't create. Donald Trump fuming under the spotlight he thought he controlled. Barack Obama walking calmly out the door, not triumphant, not smug, just steady. Because real strength doesn't need spectacle. Real leadership doesn't need noise. Real power doesn't need to shout. As the last echoes of conversation faded and the hall emptied, the story of that night remained suspended in the air like a lingering truth that refused to be ignored. People didn't talk about the lighting, or the stage, or the event's agenda. They talked about the moment a room full of the world's most powerful people watched a lesson unfold right in front of them. A lesson about leadership. A lesson about composure. A lesson about identity. For days, narratives continued to swirl. News anchors replaying key lines from Obama's speech. Commentators dissecting Trump's reaction. Psychologists analyzing Eric Trump's expression as he processed the weight of a moment he wasn't ready for. But underneath the analysis, underneath the noise, underneath the political drama, something quieter resonated. A message that transcended politics entirely. You could see it in the comments. Obama didn't win by attacking, he won by understanding. Eric looked like a kid realizing he was repeating something he didn't believe. That moment wasn't about politics. It was about maturity, and the truth of the matter was clear. What happened that night wasn't just a clash of men, it was a clash of worlds. One world built on confrontation, volume, and provocation. Another built on reflection, discipline, and timing. One world that demands the spotlight. Another that doesn't need it. A few days later, behind closed doors at a small gathering, a community leader approached Obama. She asked gently, "What were you thinking in that moment when Eric said what he said?" Obama smiled soft, almost bittersweet. "I was thinking," he replied, "that every young person deserves a chance to become better than the example in front of them." That one line spread just as fast as the confrontation itself, because it revealed something deeper. Obama wasn't trying to beat Eric. He wasn't trying to embarrass him. He was trying to stop a cycle of inherited anger, a cycle of repeated misinformation, a cycle of mimicry, not identity, a cycle that had affected a father, a son, and now an entire nation watching. And it wasn't lost on anyone that Obama did all of this without raising his voice, not once, because his strength wasn't in volume, it was in restraint. His power wasn't in dominance, it was in clarity. His leadership wasn't in tearing down others, it was in lifting the truth above the noise. As the nation reflected on what had happened, more people began to understand something fundamental. Real leadership doesn't show itself when everything is easy. Real leadership shows when tension peaks, when provocation rises, when the room trembles, when people watch to see what you'll do next. And that night, when Eric Trump's 9 seconds of mockery attempted to spark chaos, Obama showed the world what it looks like when a leader stays grounded. He didn't react. He responded. He didn't lash out. He leaned in. He didn't throw insults. He revealed truth. He didn't raise his voice. He raised the standard. That's why the final moment Obama walking off the stage without a mic drop, without a dramatic exit, without a glance backward, became iconic. Because there is something unforgettable about the person who remains calm when everyone else loses their composure. Something memorable about the person who chooses dignity over spectacle. Something powerful about the person who doesn't need to win loudly because they've already won quietly. And that's what people remembered. Not the outburst, not the tension, not the controversy, but the calmest person in the room, the one who controlled the room. As the lights in the hall finally dimmed and the night settled into history, one truth stood clear. No matter who you are, where you come from, or what name you carry, respect is never outdated. Dignity never goes out of style. And real leadership, the kind that shapes generations, doesn't shout. It stands tall, it stays steady, it walks away with grace. Thank you so much for watching this story unfold. If something in this hit you, moved you, or made you think deeper about leadership, dignity, or restraint, I truly appreciate you being here. Your support means everything. If you felt the message, if the moment resonated, if the contrast opened your eyes in any way, like the video, share your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely read every single one and share this story with someone who needs to see it. Your engagement helps these stories reach more people and helps the truth travel even farther. Thank you for being part of this moment. See you in the next story.